When I heard Michael Jackson sing in The Girl Is Mine the words, "I'm a lover, not a fighter," I immediately decided I had found my epitaph. I'd much rather love than fight. I don't think that's true of all men, maybe not even most. I think some of us have caught on that we don't have to make a choice between loving and fighting. For a long while now, the warrior archetype as a masculine source of energy has come in for severe criticism, and I think rightly so. I came of age in the late 1960s when the Vietnam War dominated the news, conversations, politics, and all too often the destiny of my peers and me. I was lucky. I landed in seminary not least because I thought it was a better choice than being drafted into the army and being shipped off to a war to fight that I didn't support. Some of my peers weren't so lucky. Classmates, school pals, old friends, all have their names chiseled on that black slab of marble on the National Mall that so aptly expresses the gash in the national consciousness wrought by Vietnam. I have a brother who was at the time a young Marine. He'd finished the U.S. Naval Academy 2 years after I had finished college. He flew helicopters in Vietnam and lived to tell about it. In fact, I never heard him say a word about Vietnam. I think I know why. I think he encountered the horror that has changed many a man and woman who've stared into the jaws of war. With all that and more besides in the half century since American troops came home from that conflict, there's little wonder that many of us disdain fighting. Yet we can't ever forget that the men and women who are sent into battle, apart from the geopolitical games that got them there, are people who in many ways are making sacrifices, putting duty ahead of many things like family, career, and safety. Indeed, go and talk to many women and men in the military, and they might tell you just how serving their country in uniform is a deeply spiritual experience. You might or might not understand that. Well, some, of course, never see it as such. To them, it's an onerous job they can't wait to get over. The mature warrior is not a reactionary fighter, someone under the spell of bravado and machismo masquerading as courage. The mature warrior is centered, dedicated to larger ideals, able to stand back from situations and assess them objectively, dispassionately, pragmatically. And here's the thing. You and I have the potential, whether we're men or women, cisgender or transgender, to access warrior spirit. It is the spirit ignited and aflame with the energy that says, this is worth fighting for. And this might be an abstraction like freedom, justice, peace, or human welfare. It might be a cause such as environmental responsibility, quality education available to all, or access to affordable health care. It might be for animal rights or economic reform. What determines the difference between a true warrior and a dangerous and damaging caricature of the warrior is the bedrock on which one takes a stand. Essentially, the caricature or shadow of the warrior, the shadow warrior, assumes one or another of a pair of opposites. One is the cruel inflictor of pain and torment and a narcissistic show of power and domination. The other is the person who surrenders power at the expense of his or her own integrity. True warriors do surrender when the struggle demands it. That's different from willingly complying with a spirit that refuses to fight for what is worth fighting for, or who perhaps doesn't know what is worth fighting for. Do I need to tell you that the world world at this moment is in dire need of true warriors. We are in grave danger of being overrun by those who are jerking us around and looking for even more ways to diminish and silence any resistance to their thirsts to amass power and wealth. We need leaders who are centered, reasonable, passionate. We need warriors who can do battle with forces that don't necessarily use the implements of war as their means of attack. Before the uselessness and immorality of armed conflict diffused much warrior language, the old symbols and texts calling us to oppose evil, to resist oppression, to engage in the struggle for freedom and truth, used such phrases as "fight the good fight with all thy might." Well, what is the good fight for you? Do you know? Perhaps it's one you're already in. Maybe it's the one that you once felt committed to but now have resigned from. The warrior spirit cannot be voted down or kicked out. But what will happen if you try is that it will go underground and rear its ugly head in devastating ways. It still comes out when people even productively talk about waging peace and waging nonviolence and the resistance. One of the most powerful expressions of the warrior spirit are those lines from Les Miserables. Do you remember? Do you hear the people sing, lost in the valley of the night? It is the music of a people who are climbing to the light. For the wretched of the earth, there is a flame that never dies. Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. They will live again in freedom in the garden of the Lord. They will walk behind the plowshare. They will put away the sword. The chain will be broken, and all men will have their reward. Will you join in our parade? Who will be strong and stand with me? Somewhere beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Do you hear the people sing? Say, do you hear the distant drums? It is the future that they bring when tomorrow comes. The mature warrior knows there are things worth fighting for. Those things are never for himself alone, nor for his or her self-aggrandizement. Noble warriors fight for what they share with humanity. Those who pick fights, those who bully, who prey upon the vulnerable, who exert power over others, who trample the poor and buy the hungry with a bribe, are not nor ever will be noble warriors. Nor will we, men and women, if we make peace with the oppressor, mollify the arrogant, or withdraw from the fight. Do it in your own way, using your own gifts, exerting your own strength in whatever way you can. But for God's sake and for your own, rise to your full height and get into the fight. If you're already in it, take heart, realizing that the war will never be over, but that victories will come as surely as defeats. On the eve of the American Revolution, Patrick Henry spoke to a nervous crowd in a little church in Richmond, Virginia. Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Some things are worth fighting for. I want to make sure I'm in the right fight. What about you? Thanks for listening, and thanks for thinking. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Do all that you can to be you, and do it in the best way you know how. Thanks so much. This may be my last 360 video, as I'm leaving the directorship of Jonathan's Circle at the end of 2024. But I will still be around, and I'll be still doing this work, and I hope that you and I can still remain connected in whatever way that's possible. Thanks so much.